This is an introduction to basic biochemistry, mostly on the elemental level, so that as we look at organic compounds down the road here and other needs in the human body, you'll have a good foundation for that. There are four main elements that make up 96% of your body mass, and the nice thing about them is they're all single letter abbreviations when you do the chemical symbols. They're oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen. Oxygen and hydrogen are so abundant because they're found in water, and 60% of our body is made of water, so those are two of the big things there. Carbon is what makes organic compounds organic, and it's found in sugars, complex carbohydrates, all sorts of things that are in your body. And lastly, nitrogen is an important element for nucleic acids, which is your DNA and RNA, and then the amino acids that make up the proteins that are one of the other large components in your body. There are also 6 other key elements that make up a lot of the important roles that are in our body. Notice these only add up to about 2.5% of things in our body. Calcium's the most common mineral in the body. It's found in bones and teeth. Phosphorus. Phosphorus is very important because it's found in DNA and holds those molecules together, as well as for ATP, which we use for energy. Notice phosphorus is a P, but potassium is a K. If you remember from the periodic table, both potassium and sodium are in group 1, and they're both important electrolytes that regulate flow of water into and out of cells. Sulfur is real important because it's in some amino acids and helps give protein shape. And lastly, iron is really key, especially in humans, because it's in hemoglobin, which allows our blood to carry oxygen. Here are a few common compounds, and it's probably worth just refreshing what types of bonds these are. Notice this is water molecule. Water has covalent bonds. There's an electron here and here that are being shared, an electron here and here that are being shared. You might remember hydrogen likes to have 2 electrons, and then oxygen tries to have 8, so that works out pretty well for there. So covalent bonds. Over here on this side, we've got an ionic bond. Sodium actually gave its outermost electron over here to chlorine, so that's why chlorine's minus and sodium's positive. Notice when you have these ionic bonds, you're typically only going to have 2 elements. You might remember sometimes, like in the case of magnesium chloride, you have 3 together, but you can't make really large chains of molecules. That's where, with like glucose here, things are real important. Because carbon has 4 bonds it can make, and that looks like this is a double bond here, it can make these huge chains of molecules. And so in this case, we've got a hexagonal ring, 6-sided ring, which is glucose, and there's another carbon off of here, and those can keep joining together and make really large molecules. Glucose is a monosaccharide. It can make disaccharides, which make polysaccharides, and large starches and cellulose, and we'll learn more about those a little bit later. And this is a precise reminder exactly what we're talking about. Because carbon has 4 valence electrons, or 4 electrons in its outer energy level, it can create 4 different bonds, which makes it a lot easier to make huge chains. In the case of hydrogen only has 1 valence electron. It's only going to have 1 bond. Oxygen, which we saw for water, can have 2 valence electrons that need to get paired up. It's got 2 full pairs already on the other side, and so it can only bond with 2 things. But carbon can bond with 4, and nitrogen can bond with 3, and that's why, especially these are for proteins, and carbon for carbohydrates. That's why they can make really long chains of molecules, which are going to be big enough to make up our bodies. Here's an example of an amino acid, and as you can see, it's a big chain of molecules, but you may not realize that because a lot of times, since we are carbon-based life forms and carbon is organic, this chain thing that you see here, at all these intersections, there's assumed to be a C. So whenever you see those shorthand notations, sometimes you might just see a ring like this for glucose, and it won't have the C's labeled at all the corners. But that's just assumed that these are C's. And then what that means is if there's only 1 bond here, and 1 bond here, and 1 bond here, the C is supposed to have 4, then there can be assumed to be a hydrogen off of the other end here. This has 2 bonds, and it needs 2 more, so there's going to be 2 hydrogens off of there. We've got a carbon here. It's got 3 bonds, and there's going to be another hydrogen there. This carbon has 1, 2, 3, 4 bonds, so it's already all good there. So sometimes you won't see every carbon or every hydrogen labeled in organic compounds, and I just wanted to give you a heads up on that as we get into more complex molecules.